Welcome into our virtual coastal classroom for today, Monday, April 20th. We'll get started in just a few minutes. In the meantime, tune in to My Friend Tafiti. Good afternoon and welcome to today's virtual coastal classroom. We're so excited to have you today because we're going to talk about one of my personal favorite topics. We're doing some species highlights, and for today, the species we're going to be talking about of sea turtles is the leatherback sea turtle. So for those of you that don't know, in the entire world, there are seven species of sea turtles that we see swimming throughout the oceans. There are the leatherbacks, the green sea turtles, the loggerhead sea turtles, hawksbills, kempt ridleys, olive ridleys, and then our Australian flatback. Here in South Florida, we see 5 of those 7 species swimming in our oceans, and one of them happens to be the leatherback sea turtle. Not only are they swimming in our oceans, but they also nest on our beaches here in South Florida, which is really exciting for us. But I want to tell you just some facts about sea turtles since we are or leatherbacks in particular, since we are spotlighting them today. The leatherback sea turtle is the largest of all species of sea turtles. If we look, this is about the size that they start off to be, so pretty small when they hatch out of their nest. But once they hatch and they get time to grow, they can be anywhere from 4 to 8 feet in shell length, and then anywhere from 700 to 1,500 pounds. Now, if you need a comparison for that, Tafiti back here is a loggerhead, just a subadult sea turtle. Tafiti came in just above 2.5 feet in shell length, so that's what we're talking about when we are measuring their shell, and is 151 pounds. And loggerheads, when we look at them, they don't get much bigger than 2 to 3 feet in shell length and weighing anywhere from 250 to 300 pounds. So just a size comparison, those leatherbacks can get really large. They are the largest of all species. When we see them coming up on our beaches, this is what their tracks end up looking like. And that's one of our researchers, our field techs that are out on the beach. She is about the size of the track that leatherback made. So really large when you look at them. They also get their name leatherback from their shell. So unlike the other 6 species of sea turtles, leatherbacks actually don't have that hard, rigid shell that covers their body. Instead, their skin is a little bit more leathery, which gives them that consistency to be able to dive really deep into the ocean. So if they had a hard shell, it would crack under the pressure that they feel when they're going deeper and deeper into the ocean. So they have this nice leathery consistency, and they don't actually have any scales. On their backs, when you're looking at, or their carapace, when you're looking at their shell, they have 5 ridges that run down the back of their carapace. So that's kind of what you see characteristic-wise with leatherbacks. We see that there are no hard shells that encompass their body. They have this black and white coloration to them, and that allows them to camouflage deep in the ocean while they're migrating through those long distances. And then we also see that when we're looking at their skull, they have a specialized beak. So every species of sea turtle does have a unique beak, which allows them to eat very specific diets. This is so that they can all kind of coexist if they do ever happen to cross each other's paths. But if we look at this leatherback skull, what you'll see here is they have this fang-like projection right here. So this is going to be the top part of its head. These fang-like projections that come down, and then this one right here fits right into the middle of it. Almost makes the letter M when you look at it all together. Now, the reason why they have these fang-like projections on their beak is because of the food that they eat. Remember, I was just saying every species of sea turtle has a specialized beak to eat distinct foods. Leatherbacks are considered medusivores. Has anybody ever heard of the word medusivore before and maybe know what that means? So that word, medusivore, if we break it down, medusas are those jelly-like substances or creatures that we see out in the ocean. So, leatherbacks love to eat jellyfish. That is their primary diet, and scientists are still trying to figure out as to why a sea turtle that is anywhere from 4 to 8 feet and 700 to almost 1,500 pounds can only eat jellyfish throughout its entire life. They have started to learn that a leatherback can actually almost eat its weight in jellyfish every single day, which is a lot of food. If you think about that, that's almost 700 to 1,500 pounds of jellyfish each day. And that is because when you look at what a jellyfish consists of, a lot of what a jellyfish is just water. So leatherbacks have to eat a lot of these jellyfish in order to keep up with their growth, in order to keep up with their movement and the energy that they need in order to survive. So they definitely eat a lot of jellyfish, and they can travel almost all throughout the world. So I had mentioned that we have them here in South Florida, but you can find them just about anywhere in this kind of blue zone that you see on this map. They are open pelagic creatures, so they tend to spend a lot of time out in the open ocean, migrating almost 10,000 miles every year between their breeding and their foraging grounds, and that's pretty common for these leatherback sea turtles. They can survive these deeper kind of waters because of that leathery shell. It expands and contracts as they're diving down into the depths of almost 3,000 feet, which is pretty deep. It's much deeper than a lot of marine mammals that we see can actually dive. Now, when these leatherbacks are going down to these depths, they're really looking for the food, those jellyfish that they love to eat. So that's one of their adaptations that they have, is diving those depths to find their food. Those fang-like projections are also a type of adaptation that they have to eat the food that they need to survive. Another adaptation that they have, it's a little scary. It almost looks like something out of a horror film. But if we look at this picture right here, this is actually a picture of the inside of a leatherback's mouth. Now, what you're seeing there, I did say it's a little scary, these are called papillae. So every species of sea turtle has what is esophageal papillae, and that is these projections, these soft body projections that line their throat. However, the leatherbacks are the only species of sea turtle that have them also in their mouth, like you see in this picture, lining right here on the kind of innards of their mouth. Now they have these projections because if you think of a jellyfish, they're nice and slippery, so those projections help catch the jellyfish and then also keep them down in their stomach, because where sea turtles eat is out in the ocean. So when a sea turtle opens up its mouth to eat that jellyfish, right, they're also ingesting water, ocean water, at that same time. And they don't want all of that ocean water in their stomachs because that's a lot of salt that they don't have the capability of getting rid of. So those papillae are actually kind of, when they line the esophagus and the mouth, they're pointed downwards towards the stomach. So the sea turtle will eat the jellyfish, particularly the leatherbacks, right? They'll eat those jellyfish, and then what they'll do is essentially throw up that water that they just ingested as well. And since the lining is pointed towards the stomach, it allows for the food to stay down while the water comes back up. And that's so the sea turtles can get rid of all of that excess salt that they have, that they're intaking while they're eating their food. Now, another adaptation that's pretty special for leatherbacks, because their coloration is pretty much all black and white, except for on the very top part of their head. So if we look at this is the pineal gland, and it's actually an extension of the brain. So this pink spot that you see right here on top of the leatherback's head is actually kind of, it helps them determine where lighting is. So it allows for these sea turtles, almost like a biological rhythm, right? So they can tell when it starts to get darker and when it starts to get lighter. And what that does is that actually helps them figure out the vertical migration of these gelatinous zooplanktons or jellyfish that we see. They use that to figure out how deep they might need to dive, when those jellyfish are coming up to the surface to eat, and when they're descending back down into the water. Now, when you're diving at these depths, remember, 3,000 feet. If anybody has ever been in a pool, you guys know that when you dive or go down into maybe like the 12 feet, as you get deeper into the water, it can get a little bit colder. Leatherbacks, if we remember back to that map, they travel all over. They can travel as far north as maybe where Greenland is, and as far south as the tip of South Africa. And with that, we have a lot of cold water that flows through those areas. So all reptiles in general are what we consider ectothermic. If you guys have ever heard of that word ectothermic, or maybe even you've heard of the words cold-blooded, that means that reptiles, like a leatherback is, survives and keeps the body temperature consistent with what their surroundings are. Humans are actually endothermic, which means that we don't rely on the environment around us. Our body temperature is consistent no matter what the temperature is outside. Now, leatherbacks, they're actually a little special. So they aren't technically ectothermic, but they aren't technically endothermic either. They're almost a mix of the two. And that is because they have a very special system that works that's counter current heat exchange. Now, what happens with this is when you look at this diagram in particular, this part right here, as we look, is the artery. So that is where the blood is originally coming from their heart, and it's normally very warm. Their veins are taking that blood back to their heart to get more oxygen. Now, they have a clump of these arteries and veins very close to where their shoulders are in their flippers, and as this warmer blood from the arteries is going to the extremities, so the outer parts of their flippers, it's close enough to the veins that it actually exchanges heat between the veins and the arteries. So that way the veins blood, that is that cold blood that just came from the end of a sea turtle's flipper, is going back and becoming warm again when it enters the heart. So this allows for a leatherback sea turtle to actually keep its core body temperature about 32 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than its surrounding temperatures, which is really impressive because it's not exactly ectothermic, so it doesn't really rely on its surroundings to keep itself warm, but it's not endothermic like we are. It's a little bit of a mix of both. And that allows it to survive in these really, really cold waters that they're diving down into, and even when they're traveling further up north and south. So that's a really kind of different adaptation that a leatherback happens to have to allow it to survive in its surroundings. So those were just a couple of my fun facts about leatherback sea turtles. Definitely some very interesting ones in there. I'll turn it over to you all if you have any questions about leatherback sea turtles.
Casey, our viewers have several questions. The first question that was commonly asked, Do we have any leatherbacks at our facility?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I had a feeling it was going to come up. So leatherback sea turtles, because they are these open ocean animals, they spend years traveling hundreds of thousands of miles. They don't do very well in confinement or kind of these very small areas. They are constantly moving when they're out in the ocean. So to treat a leatherback here, we would definitely need much larger tanks and also possibly some restrictions, right? We do treat leatherbacks. We just do it off-site. So last year we had 2 that stranded near our beaches, and our vet techs went off-site to go treat them and then release them back out into the water. Now we do have hatchlings that come into our center, but again, those hatchlings are just ready to constantly swim. So when our researchers do an excavation of a leatherback nest, they'll put the leatherback hatchlings into coolers, and those leatherback hatchlings never see the public at all because they're released that very same night once they're excavated out of the nest. So yes and no, we don't see them here in our center. We don't have the capacity or the ability to safely keep a leatherback during its treatment here, but we will treat it if it's off-site. Great question.
Is there a specific type of jellyfish that leatherbacks eat?
Yeah, so leatherbacks definitely tend to eat a lot more of these what are called lion's mane jellyfish. If you've ever heard or seen of a lion's mane jellyfish, they're very fluffy, which makes them look like they have the mane of a lion around that top part of their body, and they can be very large. They also eat our man-of-wars, so our Portuguese man-of-wars that we do see around Florida, definitely more in the winter months. They also love to eat those as well.
Do hatchling leatherbacks eat jellyfish as well?
Yeah, so all life stages of leatherbacks, whether they're a hatchling, post-hatchling, all the way up to adults, they are primarily medusivores. So they are only eating jellyfish throughout the entirety of their life.
Have our researchers ever witnessed hybrid sea turtles in the wild?
Yeah, absolutely. We had, I want to say just last year, or maybe even the year before, we have a green hawksbill hybrid that comes and nests on our beaches. We do see that there are hybrids out in the wild as well. We're not exactly sure what makes the 2 different species mate together, but we definitely see them. It's not something that is uncommon.
And on average, how large do leatherbacks grow to be?
Yeah, so on average, their shell length, or that carapace length, when we're measuring that shell length, we measure from right where, kind of we call it the notch, to the tip. It can be anywhere about 4 to 8 feet in shell length. So it is a very kind of large range, but we see a lot of those leatherbacks being on that higher range, anywhere from 6 to 8 feet.
Are leatherback eggs and hatchlings larger than other sea turtle species eggs and hatchlings?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for those that don't know, we have 3 species that nest here on our beaches. We have the leatherbacks, they're one. The greens and the loggerheads are the other 2. When we look at the greens and the loggerheads, their egg size is about the size of a ping pong ball. When we look at a leatherback's eggs, they're about the size of a tangerine. So there's definitely going to be a variance in hatchling size as well if we see that variance in egg size.
And do the leatherback hatchlings live in the sargassum like the other hatchlings as well?
They definitely will travel out to that sargassum just for protection, but scientists aren't entirely sure a lot of information about leatherbacks. They're those creatures that we don't see very often. The only times that we're seeing them is coming up and nesting on our beaches. They spend so much time out in the open ocean that scientists are still trying to figure out a lot of information about them. And even the information that we do know, we want to get more of that kind of data to make sure that the information we already know is in fact true. So leatherbacks hatchlings, they may spend a part of their time out in the Sargasso Sea, but they're definitely going to end up starting to migrate a little bit more because remember, they're looking for those jellyfish. The leatherbacks will slowly eat off on maybe larger jellyfish by using those fang-like projections that they have in their mouths.
And when is leatherback nesting season?
Yeah.
And how long does it take for the eggs to hatch?
Yeah, great question. So leatherback nesting season, we're actually in season right now for our leatherbacks here in South Florida. So they start off our season in March and they go to about June or July. It really depends on the kind of individual themselves. And with the, sorry, what was the second half of the question? I've already forgotten.
How long
do the eggs incubate, right? So the incubation process for leatherbacks is a little bit longer. On average, we say it's about 2 months, but for leatherbacks, it can be maybe even 70 days. So 45 to 60 days is average for just about all species of sea turtles. Leatherbacks, they're about 60 to 70 days.
And do our researchers still research and tag leatherbacks on our beach?
Yeah, absolutely. Our researchers have been part of the Leatherback project since the early 2000s. I want to say they started it in 2001. And with that project, we're able to get more information about these females that are coming and nesting on our beaches. So a lot of the information we're looking for, we're taking blood samples, we're tagging all of those leatherback females that are coming and nesting on our beach. We're looking at their physical appearance and health, looking for if there are any injuries on the sea turtle. And just last year we actually started taking weights of these leatherbacks as well, which was a feat in itself. So absolutely, we're definitely part of a very large project, the Leatherback project, to gather as much information as we can from these turtles that are coming up.
And last question, Casey.
Yeah.
Can leatherbacks lay multiple clutches in a nesting season?
Yeah, absolutely. And it all depends on the individual. One individual can just lay one clutch and be done with the season. Other individuals can lay multiple clutches. But we definitely know that leatherbacks can come up multiple times within a season and lay multiple clutches of eggs. All right, well, thank you guys for tuning in today. I was so excited to talk leatherbacks with you. If you guys want to keep typing in your questions, feel free to do so. I do want to give a special shout out to our volunteers. So this week is Volunteer Appreciation Week, and even though we're closed to the public, our volunteers are still supporting us in a lot of different ways. We have volunteers that are still coming in for their shifts. We also have volunteers that tune in to our virtual coastal classrooms every single week, and we very much want to shout out and say thank you guys for all of the support and donating those hours to us. You guys can help if you aren't a volunteer. You can always donate to our page, marinelife.org/donate, or even donating to this video today, and that helps us with taking care of these sea turtle patients that our volunteers help us do on a daily basis. So thank you guys for tuning in today, and we'll see you tomorrow.